That was a wonderful introduction, and I can't have to say that between us, it's the first time I've ever been introduced by a poet laureate, so it's pretty exciting. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I see many that I do know that have come out from far away and fought the traffic, and then there's some of you I don't know that I'd like to meet later. My daughter, my brother have come here. Anyway, I write mostly in free verse. I write about a lot of different topics: war, racial injustice, art, love, and of course, death. It has been said that really there are only two topics, though, that poets write about, and that would be sex and death. And unfortunately, I'm a little short on the sex side tonight, but I'll try to do a little bit at the end for you, so you're not totally disappointed. And with that, I'd like to read some from my collection. And the first one is called How, and it's an elegy to my father. He was basically a street kid in New York, and he grew up and ended up getting his MFA at Penn State and having a painting in the permanent collection at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, which is a fabulous art center. But anyway, it's an elegy for him, and it's called How. Let me tell you how he is my father. How his father kicked his mother, left bruises on him. How he fled to the safety of the streets, the sound of diesel trucks braking, bakery smells mixed with urine, the threat of knives and broken glass. How I am in awe of him by his leap from street to Renaissance. Let me tell you how he had no music lessons, had 5,000 classical albums, how he can tell you the name of each conductor, which recording is better, how scratches hurt him. Let me tell you how he is a canvas that absorbs the black ink of words and the color from every painting, empathy from every wince and kindness. How he lives, unable to eat. His riddled liver presses against his stomach. How I listen to the flip, flop of his bath shoes and try not to think how his mind must be racing. And as my father was dying, this is what was going on. And I think we often think of death as quiet when it's like cancer. And I found that to be quite the opposite. So this one is also for my dad, and it's called Death and Dying Are Action. The whir of thinking about what there is no time to think about. The whir of the visitors' solemn voices who come to say goodbye, who come to watch you die, who come to say, it's okay to go. The whir of the oxygen machine, pushing out, pulling in, pushing out, pulling in the weeping, inhaling, inhaling, exhaling. The whir of the death rattle that slows down slowly. Death and dying are action. The whir of thinking about what there is. No time. I was saying I also write poems about war, and this one is actually about PTSD, soldiers suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So you have a mix of images of war and the present, and it's called War Waltz Uncounted. It was published in the Ennis Free Journal in 2015. They ask you to tell everybody that. So. Anyway, War Waltz Uncounted. Morning comes daily in a far-off stare. Dogs blow so high they bark with the dead. He does and he doesn't wish he could care. It's all in his head, all in his head. His pain and his boot lie by the bed. The fumes and the flesh, it's all too clear. A boy and a gun, a bird in a cage. It's real and it isn't. He tries not to think. He sees what he sees, but no one can hear. His pain and his boot lie by the bed. Houses flash hot in the sweltering sun. Women and children learn not to cry. It's just like the movies watched in the night. He hears what he hears, but no one can see. His boot and his pain lie by the bed. The next three poems, having trouble here, getting all comfortable. The next three poems are about racial injustice. And you could say they are ripped from the headlines, but the first one is actually a case I litigated many, many years ago. And it's what I call a snowball effect. There's some minor transgression that keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, and finally something terrible happens, like a murder. This one is called At Fault, and it's a little unusual because it happens to be a sonnet, and you wouldn't think that you'd put a poem about racial injustice into a sonnet, but it is. At Fault. Ran out the store when Troy stole the condoms, peddled like no tomorrow, a real rush. There's a searchlight and a red and blue flash. They pull us over, and we are now men. Off your bikes, hands on your head, all of you. Lady cop puts us in back like TV. Lucky night, you're not going to juvie. The man picks up our bikes like cans of brew. It's going down. Aunt May screeched out real loud, "You got no right." Officer Joe said, "Just calm down." But Uncle Roy pushed towards the cop. Lady cop, she calls back up. There's a crowd. Siren sounds, guns and sticks. A shove, a push. Roy's on the trunk. A cop's on top. Flash. Pop. That case, the city settled with the estate of the deceased for $40,000. And so essentially the city was saying that all that man's life was worth was $40,000. So this is a current case, and speaking of YouTube, the information and actually watching most of it happen can be seen on YouTube. And it's a snowball case. It started out when a woman was pulled over for failure to put on a blinker, and she ended up hanging in her cell. First of all, there should be no going to jail for pulling over for failing to put on your blinker. Anyway, that's a side comment. In my cell for Sandra Bland. It was the blinker's fault that made him tail me, pull me from the car. It was the blinker's fault that made him throw me to the ground and shackle me. It was not a rope, but a plastic bag, a simple plastic bag to carry out the garbage, a simple plastic bag that made me swing. Her death was ruled a suicide. However, there's some question about that still. And the officer was fired, but unfortunately for perjury and not for anything else that he did. In all of these cases that we've seen lately, there is usually a common thread about things that happened, what happened to the gun, etc. And so this next poem is really a spoken word, and I call it Common Lines. He was reaching for my gun. I thought he was reaching for my gun. He had a gun. I thought he had a gun. I saw a gun. I thought I saw a gun. He was going to shoot me. I thought he was going to shoot me. I thought he had a real gun. I thought he had a real gun. I don't know what happened to the gun. There was no gun. And this one is for a friend of mine, and some of you will recognize this. It's about the dichotomy and struggle between two worlds. In this case, our friend is American Muslim, and so it's a struggle between her life as an American and her life as a Muslim, and it's called The Abyss. I look forward to seeing you, my friend, with your stark black hair and one soft pink tuft. My friend who writes of gods and demons that danced across tectonic plates, which pushed and pulled between good and evil, and of their descendants who danced on the slippery gloss of marble tiles and the rough grab of alley tar, a bloodline of movement back and forth to avoid the crevice suck of nothingness. And this is the poem that Meryl was talking about, the ekphrastic poem called Convergence. And it's about painting, Convergence, that was painted by Jackson Pollock. He was in the forefront of abstract impressionism. He was a major painter in that movement. And he would use any instrument, object, anything to put his paint on the canvas. And he was known for putting the canvas on the floor and walking around it. So this is about painting and her love for the painter. It's called Convergence. I remember how you stretched my back across the floor, moved your body around me, looked into me like a lover's first night. You stood tall on me. I felt your weight shift, and the soles of your shoes walk across me as you doused me with bucketed black paint, leaving me bare in places. The fabric of your knees pushed into me as you brushed blue and yellow into the roughness of my fiber. You dipped your stick into the can, waved your arms, splattered lines of orange and white across my texture. You dripped thicker paint on top of paint. The weight grew heavier. The room grew darker until I could no longer see colors. See you. You finished with me, left me with only your smell of oil and turpentine, left me alone, lying in my wetness. So a love poem between a painter and a painting. Now, Meryl was talking about the poem we were writing about back and forth, and it is about Emily Dickinson. And I had written a parody about it and sent it to him, and he graciously edited it. So here's our collaboration. It's called Dishes and Dashes. I broke a salad plate from a set of 4 when I took my sandwich out of doors, wanting to read Emily Dickinson in the Sun. Most likely she would be undone. There's an Emily Dickinson bandwagon I've been trying to get on. I want to grasp the greatness of her, to which there is no cure. I wonder if her poems would be as good if she wore colored dresses, strolled out on the lawn, then late at night, drank up all the town. Thank you very much.